What's happening, family? Blessings on blessings. Hope everybody's good, be feeling safe, and all that good stuff. Today, I like to talk about identity again. Surprise, right? But I don't want to talk about my personal identity. I want to talk about the collective identity of the descendants of the African diaspora in the Americas specifically. I personally believe that it's everyone's birthright to have a seat at the table of humanity, right? But since a select group of people started playing musical chairs, that isn't the case. So, in order for a group of people to reclaim their seat at the table of humanity, I believe they should be able to do a couple things. One of those things is to be able to name and identify yourself. Whenever you're able to name and identify yourself, it lets the world know who you are. It lets people know where you come from. And it's also connecting a line between you and your descendants so they know who they are too later on down the road. And, we can talk about the power of a name. We can talk about Greek and Latin things, having names for things that aren't Greek and Latin. We can talk about why Lake Victoria is called Lake Victoria. What was it called before then? We can talk about a group of people calling themselves and identify themselves from what another country or another group of people have called them, even past suppression, oppression, colonialism, all those things. We can talk about why it's important too. If you just look at history, I think one of the biggest examples is Adam naming plants and animals and stuff like that. And him naming things gave him power and dominion over those things, right? And one that hits more close to home is roots. We can talk about why Kunta Kinte received severe punishment for not wanting to be called Toby, because he fought hard to hold on to his ancestral name, because I feel like they hid that in plain sight for us to kind of see the power of stripping his ancestral name away has profound effects on us now. So the fact that they stripped him of his name strips us, the descendants, of an identity and existence before slavery. And I strongly believe that that was done on purpose. I don't think it was an accident. If we were able to know the kingdoms and the accomplishments and contributions to humanity, we wouldn't look at ourselves a certain way. And it's hard for you to be an enslaved person. But when they stripped out our way, you become a vessel for them to do whatever it is that they want to, right? That's why it's difficult for us to trace who we are, where we come from, because most of the time our descendants our ancestors only have a first name. And if they did have a last name, it'd be the last name of the slave or plantation owners. And that changes frequently depending on where they're going, where they're being traded to, all that stuff. So being able to not trace and identify who we are, where we come from, we become an empty vessel, which allows people to do whatever it is, or call us whatever it is they want to call us. And we can look back and look at the Spanish and Portuguese started calling us Negro or Negril. And just calling someone a color began the dehumanization of our people. It allowed you to see a complete and whole human being as just a color. And I guess in some way it allowed them and justified them to be able to mistreat and abuse us and look at us as product or cattle, and not really human. There's a lot that goes into it also, but that plays a strong part, right? And then eventually, Negro followed us into the Americas, and of course, America had to put their own flavor of racism on there and transformed into nigger. And ever since we were quote unquote freed, our ancestors were only to identify and see themselves through the lens of their oppressors and slave owners. So when they got out and they seen themselves or they seen the people that looked like them, it was going to be a Negro or a nigger. And that's understandable if you think about the situations where they come from, lack of education, all these other things, of course, right? But now, who we are and who we become, we're the tastemakers of culture. We're innovators of society and culture, and with our intelligence, our infinite creativity, right? We still haven't used that to identify and name ourselves. And I've heard the old argument about, well, we've taken something bad and made it good. Like how they gave us the scraps of food and we made it really good, and we put our soul in it. That's why it's soul food. And to that same argument, which has already been said, that's something that gave us underlying conditions and ended up killing us, right? And I also want to say that that's a lazy argument because, like I said, we can create. We are intelligent. We're not in that same slave mindset as we were before. So using that excuse doesn't make any sense when we have knowledge now. So I really don't think that that's ignorance, right? And at the same time, why would you still want to connect yourself to something that you had no power in claiming and identifying? So the root of it is still the root of it. It doesn't change. It's a name that was given to you by someone else. And the intention behind that name wasn't a positive one. So I don't agree with that argument. I really believe that you can't really claim ignorance to it, especially at this day and age and all the knowledge and resources and stuff that we have right now. That knowledge is like strongly null and void, in my opinion. So we are in charge of like this poison that seeps in, and we have allowed not just the descendants of the African diaspora in the Americas, but all around the world to start seeing and identifying themselves as that. Whenever I first started getting into my little Pan-African groove mindset, started looking at music, and I ran into Burna Boy, and I was vibing out with him. I was listening to Ye, and I heard that my nigga, and I was like, oh. And I know he's like Nigerian, but he spends a lot of time in the UK, all that stuff with transfers. But the impact that they have, and of course, like our musicians and stuff have, it's like it permeated, and now they're identifying and calling themselves nigger too. And we need to look at the power that it would really reclaim to be able to name and identify ourselves. So through the stuff I was able to see in the conversations I was able to see about Africans in America and Africans directly from the planet, and others in that diaspora, one thing that that the Africans have that are on the continent itself is they're able to trace back and go back to a tribe and culture and language and all these other beautiful things, right? And we, on the other hand, don't have that at all. Hence why the name of my channel, Seekers of the Lost Tribe, like we're a tribe of our own. And we don't see ourselves as that completely and entirely. And only when stuff like what's happening today and in our climate, we began to see ourselves as brothers and sisters and all that stuff when things go bad. But what's there in the interim times of peace, we go back to being called niggas. And, you know, famous quote, you can't be a nigga and a king at the same time, really makes sense. You can't empower yourself from that point of view. You can't build from something that has that historical context on it. So, with all this being said, I really like to pose the question, are we tribe nigger or are we better? Are we something else? And of course, it's a great and lofty idea, but just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But I really do believe that now that we have this time of connectiveness and brotherly black love here, to begin to think about naming and identifying ourselves something. The term African American wasn't something that we chose together and collectively, but I think now with social media and, like I said, the climate and everything bringing us closer together, why not change that and do something positive for the culture? Because usually when I hear something for the culture, it's something ignorant. But doing something positive for the culture, let's all try to come and collectively think about what we want to call ourselves. So when we do go to different parts of the country, even though we don't have our strong neighborhoods due to gentrification and everything else, it's still a way to go to connect and see your brothers and sisters and have a sense of home when we have something that ties us together in who we are as an identity. But with that, I just like to ask, you to ask yourself, are we tribe nigga or are we something greater, something bigger than that? But with that, peace and love and stay safe.